In this video I'm going to be taking a look at this for the second time, but this time from a stills perspective. This is the Lumix G100. Roll 'em. Well, hi YouTube, Brian James at Micro Four Thirds Guy with you once again, and this time I'm going to be looking at the second video in this series, looking at the Lumix G100, but this time from a stills perspective. So, what's it like from a stills point? We've already seen from the video point of view. If you look, there should be a link above, but this time I'm looking from the stills point of view. And for me, they're both as equally as important, because I bought this camera to be able to do vlogging, to be able to do face to camera, and also to be able to take some great stills pictures. So let's have a little look at what this situation is on this one. The first thing to note is its size. As I've said in previous videos, if I haven't seen them, the camera is tiny. It's based on the sort of GM series, I would say, but the addition of electronic viewfinder on the top really is a nice small neat camera, about 345 grams for the camera itself, with the battery and card included. So an absolute tiny little gem. Easy to fit in your pocket, and if you're using it with the kit lens, which can be purchased with it or separately, the 12 to 32, this comes into a very, very useful little camera which really will fit into almost any coat pocket. Now, like in the last video, I'm not going to give you all the specs. I'll put a link to a spec sheet underneath in the description here from Lumix, but some of the important things: it's a 20.3 megapixel sensor, and this is basically the same sensor which is in the higher end cameras, the G9, G90, so it's a superb. The optical quality on it really is very, very good. CMOS sensor. What I really do like about it is that consistency of results. It gives fantastic colour science. It really, the colours on this are bright, they're high in contrast. The ISO on this in extended form goes from 100 to 256,000 ISO. Now, in real terms, I wouldn't be pushing anywhere beyond 6,400, even as far as that sometimes, because you do start to get noise on these. And remember, it is a small camera. Although it's got the same sensor as in its bigger brothers, I'm almost going to guarantee that the software isn't up to the job of being able to do the noise reduction and the processing anywhere as near as good as a G9 would, for instance. So it's worth bearing in mind. But it's a different camera, it's meant for a different thing, and it's priced very, very differently too. The EVF on this as well is great. It's really bright, it's really vibrant, and it's 3.8 million dots. It's an LED type display, but like I said in my previous video, the thing which really, really lets it down is, unfortunately, the little bit on the side for the Diopter Control. I don't know if you can actually see it on that, or maybe be able to see it, but basically it's got a big shroud around it, which is good. It stops you accidentally hitting it. But when you've got the camera against your eye, there's no way to get your thumb or your finger into that to adjust it without moving your eye away. And if that's the case, and you're going to move your eye away from it, then you're not getting the focusing right. It took me ages to try and get what I consider to be a useful image on this, clean, sharp image, because every time you try and adjust it, you just can't get in. You're having to guess the whole time and keep on taking it away and bringing it back. Not a great move on that one, but the viewfinder itself really is good. The rear panel on it is nice and big, it's nice and bright, it really does get a fantastic job on it. I'll see if that'll come on in a second. It is, but unfortunately the lens wasn't open. You should be able to see it on that. It's a 1.8 million dot screen, and I love it. It's brighter than most of its predecessors by a considerable amount, but it's also nice and big, 3-inch tilt swivel, which is ideal if you're doing the selfie type vlogging as well, and it's just a joy to use. One of the things that I really like compared to, for instance, using it on my old GX1 was the fact that on GX1 in bright sunshine you just couldn't see it. This thing doesn't problem me at all, so if I'm taking a photograph even in bright sunshine, I can still compose a shot in the back of the screen. Now, a lot of people say, well, why don't you use the viewfinder on that? But I tend to find I use an awful lot of shots where I'll turn the screen and I'll be maybe looking down and take a low level shot. As I'm getting older, it's harder to kneel down and it's harder to get down on my stomach to actually take some of those shots. So a lot of the low level shots now I'll compose in the viewfinder, low down or lift it up and look high up and see what I'm doing there. So for that I'd need to be able to have a clear, clean shot to be able to see what I'm doing, and this is ideal. Now, I have mentioned about image stabilization in the video to do with the video side of the G100. Now on the still side there is no image stabilization, whether it's mechanical or electronic. So any stabilization has to be done in lens. And I know that this is a big criticism for some people, but remember, most of the early Lumix cameras didn't have image stabilization built into the body, didn't have IBIS, and this one's no different to that. The little 12 to 32 does have image stabilization in, works extremely well, and most of the Lumix lenses now have some form of IS. You can get a bit of problem when you're using some of the Olympus lenses, of course, because most of them don't have the image stabilization, but you know, it's not a huge problem for a pocket type camera. Now, I said this in the video relating to the video side of things. If you are majority doing bird photography, high-speed sport photography, anything at the extremes, then you're going to find this is not the camera for you. Just stop watching now and go to another video, because it really isn't the camera for you. If you do those and you want something for normal day-to-day shots though, this camera is absolutely ideal. You're not going to get your big camera into your pocket with your lens. It's not going to be fun to carry around all the time. This thing, you don't even know you've got it. I'm serious, I put this in my coat pocket yesterday and forgot that I had it in there. It's only when I put my hand in my pocket I thought, what on earth's that big lump? There's the camera. So it really does a fantastic job in the niche it's meant to do. Now the other thing is, as well, it doesn't have a mechanical shutter. It has an electronic first curtain shutter, which it uses most of the time, and it can go to a fully electronic shutter. And again, there's criticisms on this. Well, what about a mechanical shutter? You know, we need this. Well, majority of shots I actually take on most of my other cameras, I'm using electronic shutter, so I don't notice much of a difference to it. The big drawback, of course, as the plane goes by in the background, the big drawback is if you're using the fill-in flash, which is on top of the camera. It's got a great little flash built into it. Flick up flash there, but you're only 6 to 1/50th of a second, so as a fill-in flash, especially in bright daylight, you've got no chance with it. It's only got a guide number of 5, so it's not a hugely powerful thing. If you're using it indoors as a fill-in flash, it's usable, it's adequate. One thing I do use it for though, and I have done, is use it as an optical trigger for some of my studio strobes, and it's very effective for that. Although it doesn't have the full control I'd like it to have to be able to knock it down, so you know, you pay your money and you take your choice on these things, because the camera is set to do a certain role and not to do a super advanced role in that. The autofocus on this little camera is fantastic. The eye and facial tracking autofocus I find really quick and really accurate. Swings your camera around and start taking landscapes, and again it snaps into that mode without any question, without any hassle whatsoever. It does have contrast, depth from defocus, DFD technology on this, and for those who are going to keep on putting the comments about it should have face detect, they should have face detect. Lumix are not going to put face detect on this camera, and probably not be putting face detect on some of his cameras for the foreseeable future. They believe in this system, and like it or not, that's what we're going to get. But again, on a camera this size, this price, it's ideal. Storage is via UHS 1 SD card or SD-XC card, and straightforward on that one. Single card slot, of course, on this. Now, connection to the computer on this is via a USB-B, a micro USB connector. And the good thing about that is it allows you to power the camera and also charge the camera via that lead. It comes with a micro USB lead with it, but no battery charger. It's the only way to charge these batteries up in here. So really, you need that to be a strong connector. And this is why I have a little bit of a problem with it. Come on, Lumix, this camera was released in 2020. USB-C was becoming the common connector at that time. It's a stronger, less fragile, better power handling than the micro USB. I would have expected to see a USB-C on this camera and for that to be integrated in. That's a bit of a letdown for me. Battery life on this, so with. It's about 320 frames, 320 shots you can get out of a battery. The batteries are inexpensive though. I've got a couple of spare batteries already which I've ordered in, and they're easy to change even on a tripod, because the box on the bottom is off to one side, so for changing both the battery and the card on a tripod, very easy. But it could have been a little bit longer life. However, to get a longer life battery, then you're going to need a bigger battery, and a bigger battery means space and weight. And for the compromise, I'll stick with what we've got. Features on this, it's got bracketing. It has, just look at my notes, auto exposure bracketing, 3, 5 or 7 images in 1/3, 2/3 or full stops. Aperture bracketing, focus bracketing's in there, and also white balance bracketing. So it's very adaptable as a camera in its own right. Burst speed on the with manual focus. 6 frames a second, high speed. Normal on autofocus, about 5 frames a second. So again, it's adequate. We hear all sorts of things where cameras having 20, 30 frames a second these days. But again, remember, it's a small, neat, comfortable camera. And the cameras I was using from, even the top-line cameras I was using from the big manufacturers of the DSLR types rather than the mirrorless, were struggling to reach 7, 8 frames a second at times. You had to be really going for the top-end ones to get anything past 10. So, you know, it's not a bad little camera on that respect. Now, I mentioned flash before. It does have a proper hot shoe on the top for syncing up the flash systems. So very, very adaptable camera. I'm itching actually to use this properly in the studio. I had a quick little test of it in the studio just to see what it was like, and it was really quite surprising the results I could get out of it. So putting this on with some decent studio strobes. I know it's only a 50th of a second sync, but if you control the lighting in the studio so you can do that, it could be a very, very useful camera, and certainly a good spare camera in case your main was to pack up. Now, one thing I think is really interesting if you're going to be putting photographs straight up into social media and you want to do as much direct connection as you can, remember there's a little button on the top which very, very easily transfers photographs and videos straight across to your smart device. But one of the things I really quite like, maybe a little bit of a novelty because I tend to do most of my editing on the actual smart device, but for run and gun sort of still photography, it's got the ability to edit raw photos in camera. You can change things like the saturation, the highlights, the shadows, the white balance, contrast, and the exposure, all in camera before you send it to your smart device. So it lets you do an awful lot of the editing in advance then. What do I like and what I dislike about this camera? Well, have a look at my quick notes that I made on here. I love the compact body style with the electronic viewfinder on the top. I love things like the GX1 that I had, but I have to find a separate viewfinder and plug it in. But I do a lot of my shots with viewfinder. To have a small camera with a really good viewfinder sitting there, which is light and easy to use, fantastic. I love the in-camera charging because of the fact that I just love the fact that I can, like on my G9, just plug it in between shoots in the cars. I'm going somewhere, and by the time I get there, it's going to be nicely charged up, ready for the next shoot. Worth its weight in gold. The bright rear panel, really, really is good. It's very, very bright, very usable, even in strong sunlight. Autofocus, as I say, it's a very quick, especially on facial autofocus and eye autofocus. It really is quick. It really is rewarding on that. I love the colour science. I love Lumix colours, and I love the way that I present them, both colour and contrast. The build quality, I think the build quality, which goes into the size as well, is fantastic. It is plastic made, but it is a very strong plastic. It's a very easy camera to hold. It's very pleasant in the hand, and also it doesn't feel like a cheap amateur camera. It feels like a proper camera in a small body form. And as I said before, I love the ability to edit in camera. What don't I like? Well, the diopter adjuster. I've already said the diopter adjuster. It's a pain in the backside to get into. It's almost a waste of time being there because it's so difficult to use. The flash sync speed of only a 50th of a second. Yes, I know we've got an electronic viewfinder, but there must be ways to get around that, especially in the software. It's all software driven. There must be a way to get a faster flash sync speed than that. Micro USB rather than USB-C. Come on, as I said in the video, give us a break. Give us a proper micro USB give us a proper USB-C connector on this. And as I said, the last thing I really don't like is the battery life, but there's not much way around it if I want the other advantages. But 320 shots, it's not huge, and you do need to buy extra batteries. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, don't forget to subscribe. There's a link below. I keep on getting this wrong, but there's a link below which you can subscribe to the channel. And don't forget to give me a big thumbs up, because that helps YouTube to spread it to further and wider, so more and more people can see these videos. And if you get the chance, there's a little link for a Buy Me a Coffee underneath the PayPal Buy Me a Coffee. That helps keep the channel going, and I really appreciate those who have up to now. So until the next time, this is Brian James at Micro Four Thirds Guy saying, roll 'em.